Hi, Scott. It's so nice of you to join it
How
tonight.
are you?
I'm doing well, navigating the holidays. I went, okay, a, a different holiday than typical, but trying to find gratitude and I was so sad because this morning when I was running in the dark, it was like most of people have pulled their lights down already.
Oh,
Well, yeah, you say, oh yeah, this year we're being intentional and leaving them out one more week just because so we feel a little brightness and I was like, oh, it's back to dreary and I've got my little handle lights and I'm like, it's just more challenging. So trying to maintain positivity
okay.
as we move forward. But and I had a friend that celebrated 50 years of recovery on January 1st. So like
Cool. Very,
50 years, like,
very nice.
wow. So
I've got a couple
yes.
friends. I have one female friend who has like 57, I think maybe
Wow.
58. She's in her 90s, but so yeah. So, and she was actually a rocket scientist back in the day, like a real live
Oh,
rocket scientist, which makes me super happy.
oh, that is so cool. That is awesome. And an awesome recovery. That's good. So, well, we're not getting any questions. So here's what
I'm going to plug
that
my
I can,
books while we wait for questions. How about that?
that works. I was going to talk about a class, but go for it.
Okay, we'll do that. This is the new book. It's called Life Anonymous, 12 Steps to Heal and Transform Your Life. You'd think I would, and that's my name down there at the bottom. Just came out a couple weeks ago. It's a book that is not only for addicts, but it's actually more for non-addicts and partners of addicts who want to learn about the 12 steps and learn from the 12 steps. So I highly recommend that. I'm a little biased. And then here's the other book, which a lot of you have seen. This is a daily reader for sex and porn addicts. And I'm going to be partial to that too, because I wrote that one. So those are my two books. And yes, workshops coming up. I'll let Tami plug those.
Well, the workshop that started tonight, started about a half an hour ago, filled. So that one, we will come up with new dates for the next offering of the men's sex porn addiction 101 work group. That's limited to 25. Scott and our colleague Jason have been the facilitators for those. So they're a Zoom platform, 90 minutes, 6 weeks, level 1. And then we do have a level 2. And we're possibly having a level 3. We had people that were asking for that. So we're gonna see. We probably will have a level 3. But the other thing that we have starting this week, Saturday, is a couples healing from betrayal workshop. And I'm telling you about that. We used to run monthly live pre-COVID, weekends for couples to heal. And it's communication skills, it's, grieving losses together. It's really practical information on, what do we do now? So 6 weeks, a very good therapist, Susie LeBrock, will be, Dr. Susie LeBrock, she's got her PhD now, will be facilitating that starting this Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific time for 90 minutes over the next 6 weeks. So we had enough people that were asking about, what can we do? We don't want to travel. So this is, I think it will be a really good opportunity, to work in a small group. It's a limited group. So that's also on seekingintegrity.com. And if there's any female sex addicts out there, we do have a group for you too. The same as the guys group, the sex love porn addiction 101 group will be starting in February for women only, led by Lacey Bentley, who does the drop-in groups for women on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. So there's lots of resources. I talk to people all the time and they'll call back, and if they I'll say, have you joined, I love that you're here, have you joined the online groups and drop-in groups and listen to the podcast? And no. So the fact that you're here, fantastic. If you're listening to this after it's recorded, there's more. There's drop-in groups for men, there's drop-in groups for women, there's drop-in groups for partners, there's drop-in groups for female or male partners. I mean, there's just a lot of resources. And the Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast series has had over 600,000 downloads. So it's really good information. So lots of great content. And we try to bring you things, well, I think we really do bring you things that are, clinically based, relevant, and designed to help, each of you heal. So now we have questions. So the first question, good evening, sex addict speaking. My partner has already installed Net Nanny, but I have even suggested a program to monitor activity of my laptop. However, I am now uncomfortable with her getting screenshots of my work from my workbook, and even when I journal, seeing what websites I'm on, programs I'm using, etc. I'm more than okay with, or seeing what programs I'm on, etc. I'm more than okay with. What are your thoughts on this? This is a great question, and I think this comes up regularly in your groups too.
Yeah, the workbook, I always encourage people to get the print version of the workbook and to work in the workbook or a handwritten version so it doesn't show up on your computer, your phone, that kind of thing. And that way you don't have that issue. I'm glad you have Net Nanny. I'm glad you're okay with, all the stuff that it's supposed to make transparent. I think that's a good step toward recovery. Just do your work in the book itself or in a journal notebook, and make sure she understands that that's private. It's your recovery work, and you'll share things with her as it's appropriate. But and hopefully she'll be cool with that.
And somebody mentioned that Net Nanny doesn't do screenshots, so I'm
pretty sure it does.
Okay, I don't know enough about those.
I mean, almost all the good programs will do screenshots, and Net Nanny is one of the good ones.
Okay, so one of the things that is also suggested is that that information go to a sponsor or a therapist, so that they're monitoring things, but it isn't the partner having to police it. So I think that there are ways to set it up so that there's safety, for your partner, but also it helps you be able to be honest, with things as well too. And I don't know what I know there are a number of different programs too. So, but okay. So next question. My husband is avoiding relationship. It's been 3 years since discovery, separated for 2 years plus. He slipped again last week after we were close to polygraph and disclosure. I'm wondering about codependence and why Dr. Rob tells women to leave H or get an attorney. Isn't that against the rules for a therapist? What can I do or say to get husband to either get into recovery or not? He says he's tired of chasing recovery, that he wants to accept himself as he is. And he goes to a CSAT candidate. So, okay, so let's start with the prodependence. I'm wondering about prodependence and why Dr. Rob tells women to leave a husband or get an attorney.
I've never heard Dr. Rob.
I have. I'll start on this.
I've never heard him tell anybody to leave, but one of the things we do recommend, no matter what your intentions are, is that you consult with an attorney so that you know what your rights are, because your relationship may heal, it might not heal. You need to plan for the best, or hope for the best, plan for the worst is kind of what we do there. 3 years since discovery, separated for 2 years, haven't had a polygraph or disclosure yet. We're behind schedule here.
And another slip, and and he's so let me unpack it a little bit. So with prodependence, it isn't stay with your loved one forever no matter what they do. It's that you aren't codependent, you aren't an enabler, you aren't a mesh, you aren't part of the problem, but also there's nothing you can do or not do that will change him or her, but let's keep it this. So that's a really clear message of like, you shouldn't be pathologized for caring about somebody who's broken. That said, codependence also talks about having healthy boundaries. So you've been separated, just like Scott said, discovery 3 years ago, separated for 2 years, and there's no plan, so you are living in this in between that to me would be awful, but that's my version of it. So, I mean, if it's working for you, great. I don't think it is, because you're here and going, what can I do to get him into recovery? You have healthy boundaries. So, if you can visualize a year from now, so it's the first week of January next year, and he's still tired of chasing recovery, you still haven't had a polygraph, you haven't had disclosure, there's no plan for reuniting in a healthy way, Are you okay with that? And if you are, no judgment, all good, then, continue as you have been. If you're going, no, I'm not willing to continue to do that, then seeing an attorney, find out what your rights are. That's just knowledge. That isn't, betraying the relationship. That's just getting information, and we, anybody should have all the information and background. Like, you should know what to expect so you aren't caught. So then, what's next? I think the next boundary could be, I'm not willing to do this, and have a set time frame for, if not this, then this is the consequence. Again, you get to decide. Hopefully you're working with a qualified therapist for support. You deserve support. You're not broken. You don't need a therapist to fix you. Addicts need help from that standpoint. But so I don't see codependence and someone leaving a relationship as, sometimes the addict is not willing to do anything. So then it's time to go, okay, I deserve better, and he's not willing. He's been given tools and he's not willing. So, but that's a long time. Okay, partner of an essay, 2 years from our first discovery, with a total of 5 bombs until November of last year with formal disclosure. He has been in recovery for 19 months. And I feel like I'm just getting to square one. So I'm got a little question about that, because if you had the first discovery in 2 years, and then did he quit? Yeah, but did he quit everything in the 5 months after that? I don't know. So we have a therapist that are CSAT and working hard. I'm stuck because of a 10-year affair that was relational and celebrating anniversary, gift giving, and travel. He still insists that it was all about sex addiction. I am going to begin brain spotting. He really is working hard, just so stuck. Oh, I feel for you. That is so challenging.
I just want to address disclosure. We had one with 3 years just a second ago with no disclosure yet. 19 months, we're just getting to disclosure. That is too long, sorry. 3 to 6 months after initial discovery, disclosure should be happening. To expect a betrayed partner to sit and wait for a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years to get all of the information that she or he needs to make an informed decision about how to move forward or not in this relationship. That's just abusive. There were extenuating circumstances and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but generally disclosure somewhere between 3 and 6 months after initial discovery and moving into recovery, you should be having a formal therapeutic disclosure so that you get all of the information and you can start the healing process, because most betrayed partners find it very difficult to heal when they're wondering what happened. And until you know everything that happened, it's just really, really difficult. And that's probably why you feel stuck right now. So the second half of that question, I'll let Tami talk. 10-year affair, relational, celebrating anniversaries, gift giving, and travel, still insisting it's all about sex addiction. Maybe it is, but it might also be some love addiction. And, sometimes people are just cheat and have affairs and they're not sexually addicted. I don't know if he is working with a CSAT or not, but part of what a CSAT does is assess to see is this sex addiction? Is it porn addiction? Is it love addiction? Is it just infidelity? It hurts the same for the betrayed partner, any way you look at it. But sex addiction treatment is different than infidelity treatment. So we need to make sure he's getting the right treatment. Stop it.
But they both have CSATs, so presumably they've been, he's been screened, and I hate the 5 bombs until November of 2020. That is a long time, like you said, to not have disclosure and to be living. I don't do well in the in-between, clearly, because this is the second time in this short amount of time we've been together that I'm going, you're in the in-between. You're in that, painful part of not knowing, wondering, imagining, and your imagination may be worse than it actually was, or not as bad as it was.
Yeah, just reiterate that so the addicts hear it. your betrayed partner, if you haven't done disclosure yet, if you haven't fully come clean with a formal therapeutic disclosure, she or he is wondering what happened, and their imagination will almost assuredly be worse than what actually happened. Just that's why, yet another reason for you to want to do disclosure.
Yes. And therapeutic disclosure is important. I hear all the time about people who, I just wanted to tell her everything, so I did. And now she's traumatized and hasn't been in a supportive environment, and you've told her details that she can never unhear. I mean, all of those things are just devastating for partners. But on the flip side of it, I know partners want to know. I was talking to someone earlier today, and their partner is being a private detective and like really good at it, and sending him screenshots of what she's finding, and that's so it's so focused on this, that she has no support and no outside life because she's so caught up in this, and that's a horrible place for her and more traumatizing. And so this is a bad situation. When if you're on this website, if you're joining us on this webinar, things aren't great. So, but just know that with good help, with qualified help, and following the plan, things can get better. Now, I want to go back to the, celebrating anniversaries and gift giving and travel. Yeah, that is really hard because it's bad when it's objectified sex and it's just body parts and all of that type of thing. Yeah, this feels emotional. So, just saying, oh, it didn't mean anything to me isn't gonna cut it. You're going, yes, it did, but, unfortunately, well, here's on the flip side of it, he's still with you and you're working on it. So that to me is hopeful. And he's going to have to do a lot of work. I assume it's he. I'm making, yeah, he still insists. So yeah, okay. And that couples healing from betrayal workshop that I mentioned that starts on Saturday might be a really good fit. That might be a really good next step for the two of you as a couple, to help get a little more unstuck. So it won't fix everything, but you'll have a lot more tools, and you'll be in a group of other couples who are in the same boat, which is exactly what recovery is all about, is being with people who can support and not normalize, but make it so you're not the only one. Anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Is it common for a porn addict that is doing great in recovery to have problems with erections, getting them and maintaining? Things are going so well for us as a couple with all forms of intimacy except physical, which is causing us issues. He is so anxious about hurting me that it is causing many problems. Any ideas to help with this?
Doing great in recovery. Have problems with erections? Yes. There's a term for this. It's called porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Porn addicts struggle with erections, particularly with a real-world partner. This is not due to the frequency of masturbation. It's not due to age. Teenagers who are porn addicts struggle with erections with a real-world partner. The issue is porn. Porn is, number one, it's extremely intense with no barriers, there are no funny smells, there's nothing to turn you off. It's just all the intense body parts, and it's a stream of them. It's one after another, after another, after another. And, you just, it's like pounding on the dopamine center of your brain. And porn users can become conditioned to that, to the point where they need that level of intensity to achieve and maintain an erection. And I'm sorry, no real world partner, no matter how hot, no matter how much love there is, can live up to the endless stream of deeply sexualized, super intense imagery that porn provides. It's impossible. So it leads to porn-induced erectile dysfunction. It's not a physical issue, it's a mental issue. The dopamine hit from a real world partner who could be gorgeous and wonderful is just not enough, because the brain has become conditioned to expect more. And everything else could be going really well. It's going to take a while for his brain to reset. He's going to have to step away from porn and anything else to do with his addiction, and that includes cigarettes, drinking, all that. It all hits the same part of the brain. His brain has to reset to baseline, and that's going to take a year. I mean, if he's younger, it might take 6 months. If he's older, it might take 18 months. But a year, give or take, for the brain to go back to a baseline to where a real human being is enough.
Well, and I picked up on he's so anxious too. So like anxiety is not going to help all of this.
Right.
So, Dr. David has talked on his webinars about, sensate focused touch where, and it's just rubbing feet or with no expectation of sex. And Dr. Rob talks about this often too, is like, it's start with just, massaging feet or whatever, rubbing your neck or back or whatever, with no plan for that. Dr. Rob did a podcast with Ginger and Bill Burkaw, and it's about sexual reintegration. And it's a process. And for porn addicts or sex addicts who have struggled or have been so focused on that, it is a struggle to connect with a real person, and there's vulnerability. I mean, it can be very terrifying, having sex when you have always done it, in a non-committed way. So it's really challenging. Again, the Couples Healing from Betrayal Workshop. I'm not just plugging this. This is one of the topics that is going to be discussed in that workshop, is healthy sexuality and what all that is. So consider that as well. Okay. Next question. My husband's therapist asked me to take the following tests. Whoa. The SDI, PSS, Mawasi, and PTSI. Is it common for the betrayed partner to take the tests for the addict's therapy? No. Now, the PSS, the partners, I think that's a porn one. That's a newer one. But the Mawasi is a money and work. The PTSI is trauma. The SDI, unless there is a reason why they are wondering if you have struggled with sexual issues, then no. And honestly, I'm sorry, but your husband's therapist should be working with your husband. If you're coming in for collateral information, your therapist can give you assessments if they actually believe something's going on. But the sexual dependency inventory is a massive inventory about your sexual hours. Yeah, well, it's not that long, but it's like 600 questions. Yeah, it is long. Money and work, like I have taken that one a number of times. Surprisingly, I score high on the overwork. Everything else is fine. I know. I kept thinking, oh, I'm doing better, and I still redline it. But yeah, those are the post-traumatic stress inventory. That's a trauma instrument. I think every partner has trauma, but the boundary with this feels inappropriate. And I read
this question. I was like, why is your husband's therapist trying to treat you? You are not your husband's therapist's client. Your husband is the client.
Right. Right. Boundaries.
Maybe you need to take these tests, but your own therapist will tell you if you need to take these tests.
Yes. And, and if, you can email me, Tami, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com if you want a little more information about those particular tests. They're very useful. We have our clients take several of those, not all of those, but we do have our clients take those. And that's one aspect of our assessment, only one aspect of the assessment for the clients that come to Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, but they are useful tools. So, okay, next question. These are challenging. Should my SA husband be able to tell me how I am special and different from the women he acted out with? Should he be able to give me his personal reasoning for cheating? Besides the past trauma and addiction that developed, should there also be a personal reason? I have never seen my SA husband angry or depressed, hardly at all during our 31 years together. Since being discovered, he is emotional on a daily basis, crying, yelling, etc. Does this mean he was happier in that life than he is in our real life? this is a great question. Thank you for asking it. They're all great. I'm loving them. So
yeah, I want to take the second half of this one first.
okay.
About my sex addicted husband was never angry or depressed during our 31 years together. Now that he's been discovered and is, I assume, no longer acting out, he's really emotional. Does that mean he was happier in his previous life than in this one? No, 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 no. Sex addiction and alcoholism and drug addiction and all that stuff, it's not about having a good time. It's not about feeling good. It's about escaping and feeling less. It's a coping mechanism. I'm depressed, so I get drunk. I feel anxious, so I look at porn. I want to escape what I'm feeling, so I turn to my addiction, and it gets me out of my head. The intensity, like we talked about with pornography earlier, gets me out of those feelings, so I don't have to feel that emotional pain. His coping mechanism is gone. He's having to feel it all. I spent a year crying at Hallmark commercials on the TV because I could not control my emotions. I had spent 25 years not feeling anything. And everybody would have said, oh, he's never depressed. Well, I was, I just never let myself feel it. So that's the answer to that question. You want to add anything to that, Tammy?
I do. And I agree. When I first got into recovery, I was feeling, and somebody said, what are you feeling? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just feeling. And I hate it. I hated the feeling good and the feeling bad. It was just overwhelming. But I love that you cried at every Hallmark commercial.
I did.
Yeah,
like a year. I still do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but so he was completely numbed out and disconnected. Addiction is compartmentalization and, just not, it's not feeling. And so he wasn't happy. He just wasn't, he wasn't happy. He wasn't unhappy. He wasn't anything. So, so now this is challenging, but with proper support, with good care, we can reattach those emotions or attach them, I guess. I don't know that I ever really had them before, but anyway, but we can learn to do it differently and not, flip out at everything and be angry. And, I guess Scott still cries at every Hallmark commercial, but, I can tolerate my emotions now. So
I don't cry at all of them, but if they're a duck
okay.
or puppies or kittens, probably.
Well, that's fair. So, and then shoulds are always loaded and challenging questions. So let's just talk about, could your SA husband be able to tell you, yeah. So Scott, you actually have talked to a number of guys about, was she prettier and all that. So can you give a little,
I mean, I talk to guys all the time. And one of the questions I always ask them, particularly if they've been cheating with real people, usually women, is, was she or were they prettier than your wife? Oh, no. More interesting? Oh, no, 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 no. Better sense of humor? Hell no. Why did you do it? I don't know. I don't know. He did it because he's an addict, and it's his coping mechanism. And that's usually driven by trauma. Is there a personal reason beyond that? Probably not. There's nothing that you did that caused him to become a sex addict. There's nothing you didn't do that caused him to become a sex addict. There's nothing you can do right now to make him not a sex addict. He's either going to go into recovery or not. He's always going to be a sex addict. Sorry, he just might be a sober sex addict. And sober addicts are actually lovely people, when they do the work of recovery. So there's a lot of hope for you, but, should he be able to tell you how special and different you are than the women he acted out with? Well, that would be nice, but he may not have enough clarity in his mind to understand what's going on right now. This is one of the reasons, this is a candidate for residential treatment here. We break through this denial, help them understand the craziness of the behavior, and to understand the reasons for the behavior are addiction reasons, not relationship reasons. You can be in a great relationship and be an active sex addict. You can be in a horrible relationship and be an active sex addict. The relationship that you're in has nothing to do with you being a sex addict. It has to do with this need for a coping mechanism. So.
Well, yeah, and and sometimes it's availability. Sometimes, I mean, there are so many reasons, none of which are good reasons. But it really is about escape. In any kind of relationship or hookups or whatever, it's the dopamine. Scott was talking about that with the porn addiction. It's the dopamine. It's the, I'm numbing out, I'm escaping, I'm in fantasy. Those are not real relationships. I hear often from people who married their former affair partner and it's not worked out, and because the person's cheating on them. And I'm like, because yeah, now the real world, the real life, doing the dishes, taking out the garbage, paying the bills, that's what you're dealing with. And that's not as much fun as the fantasy of, all this other, the high risk, secretive stuff.
Sex
So
addiction, however it manifests, is a fantasy. The drug is the fantasy. Whether it's the pornography, whether it's online hookups, whether it's one night stands, hookup apps, sexting, or in-person affairs or strip clubs or whatever. It's all about the intensity of the fantasy. And the fantasy never lives up to the reality. Another question I always ask guys is, was the sex ever as good as you fantasized it would be? And 1 out of 100, a guy will say, oh, well, there was this one time, and everybody else is like, no, never. And because it's the fantasy, even with drugs like heroin, it's the fantasy of how good I'm going to feel when I'm high on heroin. The reality of heroin is I'm nauseous and I got a headache and I can't go to the bathroom and my stomach hurts because it's not so great. It's the fantasy.
well, or there was that one time when
Yes.
it was great, and then it's forever chasing that
Yeah.
that one time. So yeah, they're big disconnect. The other thing is, it's really layers. Because like in my early recovery, there were some glimmers of why I did it and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you what, I mean, even at this, a couple years ago, I had another big revelation. It was peeling back another layer. I mean, so we, as long as we continue to be willing, we can continue to learn more and understand more, in a different context. But early on, it's just learning how to deal with emotions, learning, how to have some coping skills so that we don't, we aren't just a reactive mess. One of the things that I still use, and I have used it a lot again over the holidays, is the serenity prayer, which talks about, what do I have control of? My actions and reactions. That's it. That's all I have control of. I can't control anything else. So I've learned, that I have to work on those things, but everything else that's out there, completely out of my control. So okay, next question. Essay here, 6 months sober. Yay, 6 months since discovery, painful. In a therapeutic separation with my wife, but still communicate on a schedule. And that's great. And have a date night once a week. I love hearing that you have structure and there's a kind of a plan. So I'm working 12-step with a sponsor. Yay, do lots of meetings and have an active recovery support community. One of my biggest struggles is an overwhelming urge to self-isolate, become a hermit. If I'm honest, I relish it in work from home situation created by COVID. Even after date night with my wife, I feel an overwhelmed need to be alone and get back home. I only feel safe or secure when isolated and have little human interaction outside my job or recovery work. Is this urge to self-isolate common? Should I worry? Does it dissipate? So thoughts on that?
Yes, maybe, usually. Is this urge to self-isolate common? I think addicts universally fear other people. That's why we turn to a substance or a behavior instead of a loved one to work through our emotions, to work through our depression and anxiety. And we don't like to become vulnerable. We're safer when we're alone. Usually, we learned as children that our caregivers were not adequately and consistently going to meet our needs. Maybe one of the caregivers was addicted. Maybe just one of them was crazy. I don't like that word, but you get the idea. If you've got a bipolar mother, you never know what you're going to get. So you don't take your problems to your mom because you don't know what you're going to get. If your dad is drunk all the time or hits you when you're less than, you're not going to take your problem. So we turn to a substance or behavior. alcohol, drugs, we discover masturbation, we can run with that forever. So yeah, this urge to self-isolate among addicts, it's almost universal. Should you worry? Maybe. It depends on what you're doing about it. It sounds like you're still interacting with your wife. You're communicating on a schedule, you have a date night, you're doing 12-step groups, lots of meetings, active in recovery. So you're getting some intimate, emotionally intimate connection with your fellows in recovery, which is very important. And does this desire to self-isolate dissipate? Sometimes. I mean, I'm an introvert. I'm in what they call an extroverted introvert. I really like people for about an hour or two, and then I want you all to leave my house so that I can be alone for a while. I have had parties and thrown people out. I've said, this party ends at 10. It is 10. You all need to leave. And they stand outside and talk for 2 more hours. But, they're not in my house. So, yeah, you're fine.
So my husband would be more of an introvert. He could do the caveman thing, go fishing by himself all the time. Clearly, I'm not. That is not a good thing for me. That's why COVID has been hard for me, because I need socialization. So I think a little bit of it's probably personality. I also was thinking that I bet because you're working through this and it's still early on, that there's probably some anxiety that comes up around date nights. And so you're probably a little bit on edge. So yes, it has to feel like a relief to just go, oh, I'm back home and safe and secure. But I would invite you to start paying attention to, do you feel safe when you're in a recovery group? Do you, are there moments when you're feeling safe when you're on date night? So start looking for those connections of safety to connectedness to people, and see if you start feeling those. But yeah, the overwhelm, like Scott and I were talking about with emotions, like all of those emotions, and you are doing good. 6 months is great, but it's still fairly early. So, if you look at it from the standpoint of, yes, everything's going to feel more intense. And so I do think, some of those things will start to dissipate. But I also think that, if you start doing I feel safe when I'm talking to that person in the 12-step group, I think your brain will start making those connections, that there is safety beyond just being in your little, in your own little world. Okay, next question. I'm the addict, SAPA. I feel like I've been in recovery for the last 2 years. I'm going to keep reading because I feel like that's like, okay. My wife is working on her healing through, though she is still a deep amount of pain, even after 2 years. I'm regular in my therapy with my licensed marriage and family therapist. She's not happy that I'm not in 12-step or have accountability person, but Dr. Rob has said that these resources aren't for everyone. Please help. Oh my gosh. Okay, you want to start?
Yeah, sometimes I want to put a muzzle on Dr. Rob. If he actually said these resources aren't for everyone, and he's right, they're not. But
yeah, but he didn't say so you don't have to do anything.
Right.
And
there's a ton of
that was
research
taken
out
out of context.
Yes, there's a ton of research out there that shows addicts do best with a combination of individual therapy, group therapy, and 12-step recovery. I don't know if your LMFT is thoroughly versed in sex addiction.
I thought that too.
She may or may not have a CSAT, but at least she's pushing you. I'm assuming this is the LMFT who's pushing you to get into 12-step recovery and to have an accountability person. I'm all in the LMFT's corner.
I think it's the wife. My wife is not happy that I'm. Yes, I'm sorry, but I feel like I've been in recovery.
Yeah, the opposite of addiction is connection, and that connection needs to happen with other people who understand the addiction, meaning other recovering addicts. And you're going to find that in group therapy and 12-step recovery. You need that. You just do.
So, do you know how many times a day I talk to people and we talk about going to a 50-minute therapy session once a week is not going to cut it? So I can understand why your wife is not feeling safe and is not feeling like this is enough. And I'm I'm sorry, you're an addict. I feel like I've been in recovery for the past 2 years. What is your 3 circle plan? What are your identified triggers? What is your plan for, a relapse prevention plan? What have you done? And just going to talk therapy and talking about what happened this last week to your LMFT might be the best LMFT on the planet if they are not trained to work with this, with sex and porn addiction. Dr. Rob talks about this all the time. Behavioral issues need cognitive behavioral therapy. So just doing that work group that I mentioned earlier, and Scott does some, and our colleague Jason is started a group tonight. That's the psychoeducation part that happens at treatment, doesn't happen at therapy. So you're not getting that. You're not doing 12-step. All I hear, and this is just a short little paragraph, all I hear is, I feel like I'm in recovery. My wife doesn't feel safe. I'm only going to an LMFT because you took something out of context that Dr. Rob has said that, all of those things aren't necessarily for everyone, but there's an alternative form of something. We have drop-in groups. We have multiple, I mentioned this earlier, we have multiple drop-in groups, male or female, every week, for partners, but also for the addicts. So that was probably not the answer you were hoping for, but
Yeah.
we don't mince words, do we?
Yeah, you need to go to 12-step.
Yeah, you need more than what you're doing, and
Yeah.
like if there isn't transparency about your recovery, feeling like you're in recovery is a bad choice.
Yeah,
Okay,
without 12-step meetings, I would not be sober, and I suspect Tami would say the same thing.
absolutely. And I had treatment, and I've had therapy. I needed all of that. I really did. And yeah, the treatment I got gave me enough of a foundation. The people in the 12-step taught me how to live differently, and our drop-in groups, have a similarity to that too. And then I still needed, I was a hot mess. I needed group and individual therapy on top of that. So, but it has worked for me for a number of years. So this person had added, just asking for help to get past this 35 years together. And you can get past the crisis, but like Scott said, this is not something that goes away. This will never be fixed. It's a pathway, it's a journey, and there are lots of people on the path to support you. But this is never going to be, done with that. And unfortunately, I know too many people who had, longer term sobriety in various programs, and they forgot, and they didn't continue to do their recovery work. And I've known a bunch of people too that did just enough to sort of stay sober, and then they quit. And so then we kind of call it dry drunk in AA, where they're just as nasty of a person, but they aren't drinking. And so they give themselves kudos for not drinking, but they haven't gotten better. So that's another miserable place to live. So, okay. How do you stop dissociating? I recently noticed in my late 20s that I dissociate a lot whenever I'm near my mom. Oh, sometimes she tries to be fun, but I normally don't feel myself around her. Wow, thank you. That's a really insightful comment. So, Scott?
Yeah, first of all, dissociating can mean a lot of different things. It can, everything from daydreaming to stepping out and having a smoke, to actually leaving your body. That's like really dissociating, but we dissociate as human beings all the time. It's kind of an easy coping mechanism, but recently noticed in my late 20s that I dissociate a lot whenever I'm near my mom. You probably have some trauma issues with your mom, and you probably may want to look into some trauma therapy treatment. Tami can point you in the right direction with that stuff. But yeah, I get it. I had a lot of issues with my mother. I struggled through that for a long time. And somewhere around 10 years sober, I started to feel fine around my mother. But there was a lot of work around that from my end, and some work through her end, which she chose to do, and I'm grateful. But how do you stop dissociating? You don't stop dissociating, but if you feel yourself like really leaving your body, you need some therapy to work through that. That's serious. If you're just daydreaming or just checking out for a few minutes because your mom's getting on your nerves, that's actually kind of normal. But it sounds like, that whatever it is that you're doing feels like more than normal. So I would look into some therapy to talk about it, and to work through whatever trauma is there.
Yeah, particularly because you don't feel yourself around her. That feels like longer periods of time, and where you might just, have blank memories and stuff too. So yeah, I agree. Getting support, and it doesn't have to take 10 years. I mean, that was Scott's journey. I'm glad you're asking now, and getting the proper help, early on, and just recognizing it. I mean, I think that's huge.
It took 10 years for me because it took me 9 years to decide that I wanted to deal with it.
There you go. That was probably, yeah. Okay, so hello, I no longer watch porn. I was able to easily give that up months ago. I never really sought help because I felt like it wasn't an issue for me anymore, as I lost interest in it. My partner moved out because I didn't seek help and was still glancing at women, though through a men's group, I've managed to tone down the looking by checking myself and limiting it to less than 3 seconds if possible. I heard a podcast with you, Tami, and Dr. Weiss saying it was okay to satisfy yourself. So if I'm alone now, is it okay for me to satisfy myself occasionally, meaning I'm still a human being and a sexual being?
I assume by satisfy yourself, you mean masturbate.
Masturbate, yes.
This is not a question that I think Tami or I or Dr. Rob can answer just based on the information given. You need to be talking about this with your therapist if you have one, with your support group. You do have a men's group that it sounds like you talk about sexual issues with. So this is the kind of thing you need to talk about, if you have a sponsor there, with them, because they know your full story. They know all of the issues. Congratulations on being able to give up porn. Some people can just step away from porn and it's not an issue. Other people really, really struggle with it. But I don't know if masturbation is an integral part of your addiction or not. When we're working with sex addicts, we have them do what we call a circle plan or a boundary plan. The inner circle is problem, bottom line behaviors. If I engage in this behavior, I'm not sober. If I cheat on my wife, if I use porn, if I hire a prostitute, things like that end up there. The middle circle is slippery thoughts, slippery people, places, and things, and thoughts and behaviors and feelings. And then the outer circle is healthy stuff. And the question always is, where does masturbation go? I always encourage people, particularly early in recovery, err on the side of caution. So nobody ever died from not masturbating. It didn't happen. There are guys out there who will insist that your testicles will explode if you don't masturbate. They're not doctors. It's not true. It does. Plenty of people never have an orgasm for like years on end, and they don't explode. But yeah, you're a sexual being. You're always going to have thoughts, particularly if you have some compulsive sexual behaviors in your past. You're always going to have thoughts. It's what you do with them that really counts. But as far as masturbation, I think you need to talk to the people who really know your situation better than we do at this point.
Yeah, and I lost interest in porn, but you're still checking out women. I'm curious to know what else is going on, because most of us don't just stop everything, so sometimes it's smoking or vaping, sometimes it's drinking or doing some other form of drugs, sometimes it's gaming, so it's not porn, but it's gaming. So I would also explore what else there might be that is that
it becomes your replacement coping mechanism.
Exactly.
When I don't have my porn coping mechanism, I'll do this instead.
Yeah. That's my thought. Okay. I've been married to my partner for nearly 36 years. We have been separated for over 5 due to his infidelity. He has been in and out of therapy, and we have been in couples therapy, but my spouse has never really owned a recovery process. He has been involved in the same sex affairs. He was never cut off contact with the affair partner and says they are now only friends. Recently, he has been saying that he wants the opportunity to rebuild our marriage, but I can't honestly do that as long as he continues to have contact with this person and not in his own recovery process. Do you have any thoughts?
Why don't you do that one first? I have thoughts, but they're going to be.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. Yeah, the separated for over 5 years due to his infidelity. So partners that want to be in relationship with each other will do what needs to be done in order to make it safe. And what I hear him saying is, I still want to have this friend, and I want you, but I still want my friend, and we're just friends. So you should just trust, because I've been so trustworthy all these years. You should just trust that we're just going to be friends. So I think trust your gut on this, which I hear from what I'm reading is, no, this doesn't feel good. I would also encourage you. I mean, again, I go back to the earlier one. If you're good with this, and living separate, and it's a relationship you're good with, great. But otherwise, is there something that you would like to have different at the end of next year? It's the beginning of the year. Is there something that by the end of next year, I want to see either this or that or whatever? But my thought is, he's not creating, I mean, yeah, an affair partner doesn't magically become a friend. My thoughts anyway.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, 100%. And, I am going to quote Dr. Rob now. He says he wants the opportunity to rebuild our marriage, but I can't do that as long as he continues to have contact with this person. Yes, I mean, in Out of the Doghouse, Dr. Rob says, if you want to repair your relationship, here are things you have to do. And it's either number one or number two on the list is cut off all contact with the affair partner, period. At most, send them a text that says, my wife found out about the affair. I want to stay with my wife. We can no longer communicate. And then you block them and you erase their number from your phone. And if they continue to contact you, you get a new phone number. You block them from your email, all of it. Because, how is your wife supposed to trust that you're in a relationship with her if you're still in a relationship with him in this case? That's just not going to work. So and you obviously feel that way. You've kind of laid down a boundary. I'm not going to do this work with you if you're continuing to be in contact with your affair partner. I don't blame you.
Glad you're here.
Yes.
Okay, next question. I'm 2 weeks into my 90 days abstinence. My partner and I don't talk as much anymore since we separated. Not sure what's going to happen with us. My question is, should I continue with this 90 days? I've been porn free for 8 months.
Yes. You made a commitment to 90 days. Keep it. What are you going to lose if you keep the 90-day abstinence? Nothing. If you don't keep the 90-day abstinence, what are you going to lose? Your sobriety, your relationship, your job, all kinds of things you could lose. Being abstinent for 90 days is not going to cost you anything.
Well, and my partner and I don't talk as much since we separated. So what is your plan? So are you, I loved the previous one. We have regular communication, we have date night, whatever, so what's that old quote? The if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, or something like that. It's something like that. Yeah.
Is planning to fail. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
John Wooden.
John
Wooden, basketball coach, UCLA.
Just remember that. So anyway, it was one of those where I'm going like, what is the plan? And I would invite all of you, because I hear a lot of that oftentimes is like, we're separated, but there's not a, here's what I need to see in order for us to reconcile. Here's what a reconciliation would look like here. I mean, it's just, we separate and then years go by and you're still separate and there's still no plan. So I would, if the partner, and when you are not talking and you're really separated and you're not going to get back together again, then for both of your sakes, and if there is a hope for a reconciliation, what's the plan? So, but I'm with Scott, 90 days is 90 days. Just honestly, just accomplishing that, that's an,
You'll feel better about yourself.
Yes. Okay. My husband is doing good work in recovery. He has, however, taken up smoking since Discovery Day. Is that okay? No. Dr. David does. I make sure when I'm on Dr. David's webinar with him, I always bring this up because, our facility is a non-smoke, non-vape facility. And he talks about why that is, because otherwise that keeps the dopamine drip, just going. So you've always got it on low hum. And guess what? He's just traded one for another, and he still doesn't have to deal with the unpleasant emotions and any of the real stuff that brings into recovery. So I'm on a recovery Facebook page, and some of them talk about, oh yeah, go ahead, vape and smoke and all of this kind of stuff, and I just go crazy. So no.
His brain cannot reboot while he's still actively engaging in an addiction, and smoking. Nicotine is one of the most addictive drugs out there, and it's also gives one of the biggest dopamine hits. It's like cocaine, meth, cigarettes, and then we get to orgasm. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link. Dr. David did a video on the Super Saturday Recovery Summit, and I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody. Panelists and attendees. So check that out. He had a chart about where dopamine and cocaine, dopamine and sex, dopamine and nicotine. So, okay, next question. My SA partner lives a long distance and refuses to agree working on the coupleship and commit to not spending time apart as we work recovery. It has been a year since discovery, and until now, we have both been doing our own separate recovery. I couldn't stay in the in-between any longer. Our last conversation on the phone, he wanted to consider ending the relationship, and I agreed. What advice do you have for telling our 20-something kids?
That's a tough one. Start with the truth. The truth usually is best. Your kids probably know that something's going on if they don't already know. You don't have to be super specific, but if you're ending a relationship, you do have to tell the kids. What I would suggest is if you and your partner can agree on what to tell them, and maybe telling them together, writing out a script, sticking to the script. That's usually the way to go. Sometimes if there is a couples counselor, they're very good at not only helping rebuild relationships, but helping facilitate breakups in a healthy way. So you may want to look at a couples counselor, even if it's only to facilitate a healthy breakup. Just a thought.
And as Dr. Rob says all the time, no kids, even adult kids, want to know about your sex life. So telling them that the relationship didn't work out and we're going our separate ways, and that it just, we couldn't find a path that was mutually supportive moving forward. There's all kinds of ways to let them know that the relationship is over. You can continue to be in dialogue with that person. It's between us. It's, it's just like a divorce. It's like, it doesn't mean you don't still care about that other person, the kids to the other person. You can have whatever relationship you need to have, and, just don't let it be triangulated but no kid wants to know. I don't want to know about my parents' sex life. I don't want to know. So, okay. I'm a sex addict at 57 and just 60 days from D-Day, and I'm wondering about this disclosure. Is there a format for it? Yes. Don't do it on your own. Have a formal therapeutic disclosure. Rob, so Scott mentioned it earlier, but Dr. Rob talks about it briefly in Out of the Doghouse and Sex Addiction 101 too, right?
I think we had it in there and pulled it eventually.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, formal therapeutic disclosure, it is a process. There is your therapist, there's your partner's therapist, and often there's a couples therapist that facilitates it, that represents the relationship. So your therapist works with you, your partner's therapist works. And there's an exchange of questions. It's very formalized. It's a process, not an event, and it needs to be done right. A poorly done disclosure will end the relationship faster than anything. Whereas a properly done disclosure, with all the support in place, is a tremendously healing event. Most betrayed partners will say, "This is when we started to heal," as a relationship. And CSATs, Certified Sex Addiction Therapists, are trained in this disclosure process. So you want to work with the CSAT here, period. But
not all CSATs are willing to do disclosure. So that's actually, it's it's something, and not everybody is comfortable doing it. So you want people, so the partner has a support therapist, the addict has somebody who's helping them navigate this. And yes, you had discovery. I hear this all the time too. Oh, they already know everything, or the partner says, I think I know everything. You don't. And so, and it's data. It's not, this isn't, a 20-page document. It's a couple of pages, and it's documented data. It's like, I had unprotected sex X amount of times. I spent this much money, da, da, da. It's that type of thing. Now, it is fair for partners to understand if that happened in their bedroom, if it happened with a best friend or a relative or something like that. But, there are certain things that, they do need to know. There can be emergency disclosures, like you need to go get an STD test, some of those type of things. But really, if, the point of having a disclosure is, just like Scott said, it's to set a foundation, for healing. So you do want to both have support in place to navigate it and do the best job you can with it. So you don't want, like somebody reported earlier, 5 bombs of information. Or I hear too, we've had 5 disclosures, and he still has failed the polygraph. Polygraph is not always part of it, just saying. So so get help. We've got one more question, so we're going to quickly finish this one too. What steps can you expect for the addict in his recovery? My husband only does therapy once a week. His therapist says he can't define it until he gets to know my husband. Meanwhile, I'm left hanging.
I don't know what kind of therapist this is. I don't know if he's seeing a CSAT and define it. Is he trying to decide if your husband's a sex addict or not? I don't know how long this has been going on. But if he is a sex addict in recovery, in addition to individual therapy, there would also be a group therapy, probably once a week, and 12-step meetings 3, 4, 5 times a week, maybe 7 times a week. That's kind of the minimum that I would expect for a newly recovering sex addict, is individual, group, and multiple 12-step meetings every week. Now, it's, right now it's tough to get to multiple 12-step meetings. So maybe a 12-step meeting and 2 online groups with sex and relationship healing, something, but at least 3 or 4 things a week in addition to individual and group therapy.
And the podcasts are 24/7. We have, these webinars are recorded. There's a reason, because people are watching them. There's hundreds of hours. I say this all the time too. If an addict pursues their recovery with the same energy that they pursued their addiction, they're going to do really well. And just like I started off, I'm going to start and end the same. A 50-minute session once a week is not going to change decades of behavior. And, even if you go, oh, he only did it for 2 years. Trust me, it started when he was young, the dissociating, the maladaptive coping mechanism. So this is old stuff, and going to see a therapist once a week, mostly starting off the first part of the session talking about what happened this week, and not ever getting to the underlying issues of what caused, why do people act out? They're looking to numb out, to escape. What happened, so yes, you're left hanging. So here's for you. Out of the Doghouse is one thing. Sex Addiction 101 is another book, but Prodependence, you read Prodependence, please. Then you are here. Great. Guess what? There's partner groups. There's an old lady posse tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. It's for women of a certain age. We don't define that.
Plenty of younger women go that
I know they do.
Co-hosted.
They do, but so that particular group is for women that are okay with that title. Then Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, there's another betrayed partner group, and Thursday morning there's another one at 8:30 a.m. Those are all, and Sunday night. So there's specifically groups for you, so that you're not left hanging alone. But in Prodependence, it talks about setting healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are like, that's not enough, and I'm still stuck and there's no safety. So give him out of the doghouse. There's podcasts on that as well to read. Hopefully he's on this with you and listening to this as well. But the work group would have been a great choice. That just started. We'll start another one in February. But that's educational information for those who struggle. So So thank you, Scott. I think he'll be back in about 2 weeks to join me again. So anytime Dr. Rob, he's got a writing commitment. So anytime he's writing, Scott may be joining me. We'll see. Dr. Rob might take a break too. So we'll see. So, but thank you all for being here. Thank you for the questions. And join all the other resources. I've got a new Wednesday morning presenter starting this Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, Kelly Gunter. I loved her information. I think she's amazing. So I hope you join for that one too. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.